Titus Nichols, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and also a law professor at University of Georgia.
Titus Nichols is a former state prosecutor, now a professor at University of Georgia School of Law.
I'd love to have you with us, Professor Nichols.
Titus, good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me back on the show.
We have never charged a case in that kind of time frame, and we can only charge a case when we have sufficient admissible evidence.
Titus, what do you think of that point about the timing of this and how long it took them to do it?
I believe the prosecutor in this case is trying to make a point that compared to, say, the situation in Georgia with Ahmaud Arbery, where the prosecutors took over 2 months to charge the killers, he's showing the public how quickly his office is moving on bringing charges. On one end of the spectrum, law enforcement could have just told him to call an Uber and go home, and they towed his vehicle. That way, there's no risk of him driving his car and either hurting himself or anyone else. On the other end of the spectrum, as a prosecutor, I've prosecuted cases where individuals came into conflict with law enforcement, ran away, and the police let them run away. Why? Because they have their car. They know the person is not going to get far, and they're going to arrest them. If the purpose is to serve and protect the community, what danger was Mr. Brooks going to be with a bright yellow taser at 11 o'clock in the morning in downtown Atlanta? You can't start off with the care in a situation like this because everyone's going to play dumb and say they didn't know what happened. However, if you start off by individually identifying what level of culpability each player had, you can start from there to see if they're willing to cooperate. If not, then you can go forward and prosecute them appropriately for the crime that they committed. And in a heinous crime like this, it's not a situation where there's going to be any type of justifiable explanation for what happened, especially since all three of the individuals refused to explain what happened to the child when she went missing.
The citizen's arrest requires that you actually see someone committing the crime before you engage in pursuit. And even then, it can only be done to detain them until law enforcement comes. Here, they did not know what he was doing. What they saw was a black man who they didn't recognize in their neighborhood. So they jumped in the back of their pickup truck like Dukes of Hazzard and went chasing after him with firearms. And this is what led to his death.
The bigger issue for me personally is the question of how many more times do we as Americans have to see a black man being killed on video? I mean, just in my time alive, I've watched the Rodney King beating as a child. I remember Amadou Diallo in New York. I remember the situation in Cincinnati, the riot that happened because a black man was shot there.
Yeah.
Tamir Rice. You have all of these situations in which it's the exact same action happening over and over. And while I can't imagine anybody condones looting or destroying public property, there is the question of what will it take for those in charge to hold the wrong police officers accountable so that it's known that they can't abuse their authority.
I got about 20
The point's
seconds
going to
here.
be that it's going to come down to votes. If you look at the three important states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, those three states went to Trump last year by the last election by less than 75,000 votes. Those are also states that have also turned blue in the gubernatorial house. Wisconsin has a Democratic governor.
We're going to see a wave of brown, black, Asian faces that are voting Republican because they're sick of Democrats.
I know
Not enough of them.
Titus Nichols, wonderful to have you on the program. Thanks for your expertise.
Titus, I want to thank you so much for joining us. You're fantastic as always, and I'm sure you'll be joining us again sometime soon.